Welcome to Sleepy Story Facts, and to this very special gentle bedtime story, crafted just for you, for this quiet moment, for the soft and unhurried space between wakefulness and deep, restful sleep. Tonight is not like other nights. Tonight, you are not simply closing your eyes and waiting for sleep to find you. Tonight, you are being invited somewhere vast and serene and impossibly beautiful. A place where science and stillness hold hands, where the greatest mysteries of the cosmos arrive not as puzzles to be solved, but as lullabies to be felt. This is your sleep story, your calming narration for the night, and it has been made with one intention only: to help you fall asleep slowly, peacefully, and completely. So wherever you are listening from, whether you are tucked beneath a heavy duvet in a cool room, lying on your side with your head pressed softly into a pillow, or resting in some other quiet corner of your world, I would like you to begin by simply noticing the surface beneath your body. Feel the gentle pressure of it holding you, the way it meets your shoulders, your spine, the backs of your legs, and the soles of your feet. You do not need to move. You do not need to adjust. You only need to allow that support to be real, to let it remind your nervous system that you are safe, that you are held, and that for the next several hours, there is absolutely nowhere else you need to be, and nothing else you need to do. Now, if it feels comfortable, let your eyes close, and take one slow breath in through your nose, filling your lungs gently, not forcefully, just a long and easy inhale, and then release it even more slowly through your mouth. A quiet and unhurried exhale that lets your chest soften and your jaw unclench and your shoulders drop just a little closer to the mattress beneath you. Let the noise of the day, the thoughts, the tasks, the conversations, the small anxieties that followed you into this room, let all of it begin to loosen now. You do not need to push it away. Simply allow it to drift. The way a leaf drifts from a branch in late autumn, slowly, without effort, carried by something gentle and invisible, until it comes to rest on still water. This is your time. This is your nighttime story, and it belongs entirely to you. Tonight, this relaxing story will take you somewhere that no spacecraft has ever traveled, somewhere that no telescope has ever truly seen, and yet somewhere that science tells us, with growing confidence and quiet wonder, may be more real than the room you are resting in right now. Tonight, we are going to drift together toward the idea of the multiverse, the possibility, whispered first by mathematics, and now spoken aloud by some of the most careful minds in modern physics, that our universe, this enormous, ancient, star-filled cosmos that stretches in every direction for 46 billion light years, may not be the only one, that beyond the farthest edge of what we can ever observe, beyond the last faint glow of the oldest light, there may be other universes, perhaps infinitely many, each one slightly different, each one its own vast and silent world, floating in a deeper fabric of existence that has no name we can fully pronounce, and no shape our minds were quite built to picture. And the most soothing thing about this idea, the thing that makes it the perfect companion for a gentle bedtime story, is not that it is strange or overwhelming, but that it is, in its own quiet way, deeply comforting. Because if the multiverse is real, then somewhere in the infinite arrangement of all possible worlds, every version of rest exists. Every version of stillness. Every version of a night just like this one, where a voice moves slowly through the dark, and a mind lets go of the day, and a body sinks deeper and deeper into sleep. You are not alone in this moment. You are, in the most scientific and most poetic sense, one of an infinite number of resting souls, each one drifting, each one breathing, each one releasing the weight of their particular world and falling gently and without resistance into the soft and endless quiet. The first relaxing fact about the multiverse is this: the universe we live in is not infinite in what we can see, but it may be infinite in what exists. The observable universe, the portion of the cosmos from which light has had time to reach us in the 14 billion years since the Big Bang, is itself unimaginably large, containing over 2 trillion galaxies, each holding hundreds of billions of stars. And yet, according to the leading models of cosmic inflation, the universe almost certainly extends far beyond that observable boundary, perhaps without limit. And in that limitless extension, patterns must repeat, conditions must recur, and somewhere, unimaginably far away, arrangements of matter nearly identical to our own solar system, our own planet, our own quiet room must exist as well, resting in their own version of tonight. Let yourself settle a little deeper now. If you felt your body shift or your thoughts stir during that first gentle drift into the multiverse, that is perfectly natural, and there is no need to correct anything at all. Simply notice where you are, the warmth of the covers, the steadiness of the surface beneath you, the quiet rhythm of your own breathing, which has already grown a little slower and a little softer without you even trying. And allow this calming narration to carry you further, the way a slow current carries a boat, not by force, but by the patient, invisible movement of water beneath it. You do not need to think about the facts in this relaxing story. You do not need to memorize or analyze or hold onto anything at all. The words are simply here to give your mind something gentle to rest upon, like a hand resting on still water, present but weightless, touching but not disturbing. So let your thoughts soften around the edges now, and let this nighttime story continue. To understand the multiverse, it helps to understand the Big Bang, not as an explosion in the dramatic sense, not as fire and violence and a deafening roar, but as something far quieter and far more mysterious than that word usually suggests. Imagine instead an unfolding, a slow and stately expansion of space itself, not matter moving outward through empty space, but space itself gently stretching in every direction, carrying everything within it the way the surface of a balloon carries whatever is painted upon it when it is slowly and smoothly inflated. In the earliest moments of our universe, this expansion was extraordinarily rapid, faster, in fact, than the speed of light. Not because anything within space was moving that quickly, but because space itself was stretching at a rate our mathematics can describe, but our imagination can barely follow. This period, which cosmologists call cosmic inflation, lasted for only an almost incomprehensibly short interval of time, a fraction of a second so small that no ordinary word for brevity comes close to capturing it. And yet, in that vanishingly brief moment, the universe grew from something smaller than an atom to something larger than a galaxy, smooth and even and serenely balanced. The foundations of everything we have ever seen laid down in a breath that was over before it began. The second relaxing fact about the multiverse arrives here, nested within this story of inflation. And it is this: many physicists believe that inflation, once it begins, does not stop everywhere at the same time. Instead, in most regions of the greater cosmos, inflation continues forever, an eternal, ongoing stretching of space that has no end and no boundary. While in certain smaller pockets, inflation slows and stops, allowing matter and energy to settle and cool, and eventually form stars, galaxies, and worlds. Our universe is one such pocket, a bubble of settled space floating within a vast, still inflating ocean of something larger. And just as bubbles form continuously in boiling water, these pocket universes are thought to form continuously within the eternally inflating background, each one a separate cosmos, each one sealed from the others by the unstoppable expansion between them, each one its own universe, carrying its own history, its own physics, its own version of time. This is what cosmologists call eternal inflation, and the multiverse it produces is almost beyond imagining. Not 2 or 3 or 1,000 separate universes, but an endless, ever-growing collection of them, each one born from a quiet fluctuation in the fabric of inflating space, each one expanding and cooling and evolving in its own unhurried way, utterly unaware of all the others around it, the way a single snowflake drifting through dark air is unaware of the billions of other snowflakes falling beside it through the same winter sky. And as you lie here in this gentle bedtime story, drifting in your own small pocket of warmth and stillness, you might find something quietly comforting in that image. The idea that existence is not scarce or fragile or singular, but endlessly, generously abundant. That the cosmos is not a single candle burning alone in the dark, but something more like an infinite field of soft lights, each one glowing in its own space, each one complete, each one enough, each one held within a larger darkness that is not threatening, but simply vast and calm, and full of the same deep quiet that is settling over you right now, drawing you gently, breath by breath, thought by thought, closer to the deep and restful sleep that is already waiting for you just beneath the surface of this moment, patient and soft and entirely yours. There's no need to hold on to anything right now. Whatever thoughts are still moving through your mind, small and restless, circling quietly like moths around a lamp, you can simply let them be without chasing them and without pushing them away, because this gentle bedtime story is not asking anything of you except this one soft thing, which is simply to rest, to breathe, and to let the words arrive and pass like water over smooth stones, leaving behind nothing but a deepening sense of calm and a body that feels heavier and warmer and more completely supported with every sentence that drifts past you in the dark. Your eyes are closed now, or nearly so, and the room around you has softened into a kind of background presence, familiar and safe. And beyond that room, beyond the walls and the night outside and the sky above the roof, the universe continues in every direction, ancient and unhurried and indifferent to clocks. And it is into that quiet immensity that this relaxing story now carries you once more, carefully, slowly, the way a tide carries something beautiful, not by grasping, but by simply rising, one of the most soothing things about the multiverse. And this is the third relaxing fact of our long and gentle nighttime story, is how the mathematics that describes it emerged not from wild imagination, but from the most careful, most rigorous, most patient kind of scientific thinking, when physicists in the mid-20th century began working out the equations that govern the behavior of the very small, the world of particles and energy at the quantum level. They discovered something that was not supposed to be there. The equations kept producing extra terms, extra solutions, extra branches of possibility that the mathematics seemed to insist upon, but that nobody at first knew what to do with. A single particle, the equations suggested, did not simply travel from one place to another in the way a stone travels through air. Instead, it seemed to exist in a smeared and blurry state of multiple possibilities all at once, as if it were simultaneously trying every available path through space, every possible direction, every conceivable trajectory, all overlaid upon one another in a shimmering, silent superposition that only resolved into a single definite location when something interacted with it and forced it, gently and irreversibly, to choose. This is the quantum world, not chaotic or frightening, but simply different from the solid, predictable world we navigate each day, softer at its edges, more fluid in its nature, governed by probabilities rather than certainties, and shot through with a kind of latent abundance, a sense that more is always possible than what actually appears. The fourth relaxing fact of this sleep story deepens this idea in a way that is, once you let it settle quietly into your mind, rather than trying to grasp it all at once, profoundly and almost tenderly beautiful. In 1957, a young physicist named Hugh Everett III proposed a remarkable interpretation of all that quantum strangeness, and his idea was this: perhaps the reason the equations always produce multiple solutions is not because nature is being imprecise, or because our mathematics is flawed, but because all of those solutions are real, every single one of them, playing out simultaneously in separate, non-communicating branches of reality that split apart silently and completely every time a quantum event occurs. In this view, which physicists now call the many worlds interpretation, there is no mysterious collapse, no single forced choice, no one branch of possibility that wins and all the others that vanish. Instead, everything that can happen does happen, each outcome flowering into its own complete and separate world, branching away from the others, not with violence or noise, but with a silence so perfect and so total that neither branch ever knows the other exists. The way two rivers that diverge at a delta, both continue flowing, both carrying water and light and the reflections of clouds, neither one diminished by the existence of the other, neither one lesser or more real, both simply going their own way through the quiet landscape. And as you breathe here in the dark, in the warmth of your own small and precious world, you might allow that image to carry you somewhere very still. The idea that at every moment, existence is not shrinking or narrowing, but opening, branching, blossoming silently outward in all directions at once. And that the version of you lying here in this gentle bedtime story, drifting toward deep sleep in this specific and unhurried moment, is one of countless versions of you that exist across the branching multiverse. And that in every single one of those branches, in every one of those infinitely various worlds, there is a version of this night, a version of this stillness, a version of this slow and calming narration, and a version of you that is already, softly and completely, asleep. Let your body grow heavier now, just a little more, as if the blanket over you has become something warmer and softer and more perfectly weighted than before, as if the pillow beneath your head has shaped itself exactly to the curve of your neck and the particular quiet angle of your resting face. Because this is what deep rest feels like when you stop resisting it, when you stop waiting for it, and simply allow it to arrive the way the tide allows the shore, not rushing, not demanding, simply moving in with a slow and patient and completely inevitable grace. And this calming narration is here beside you for every moment of that arrival, unhurried and soft, a steady voice in the gentle dark, asking nothing of you except the simplest and most natural thing in the world, which is to breathe and to let go, and to follow these slow and soothing words a little further into the quiet. We left the multiverse branching, silently, endlessly, at every quantum moment, dividing not with drama or noise, but with a stillness so complete that no instrument has ever heard it, and no eye has ever seen it, each branch carrying a full and complete version of reality forward into its own unfolding future, sealed from all the others by a barrier, not of stone or distance, but of pure informational separation, each world unable to reach across to any other, each one whole, each one enough, each one carrying forward its own stars and its own seasons and its own sleeping figures, breathing softly in the dark. The fifth relaxing fact of this long and gentle sleep story is one that physicists find both technically fascinating and quietly profound. And it is this: the branching of the many worlds multiverse does not happen only in laboratories or in the cores of stars or in some distant and exotic corner of the cosmos. It happens everywhere, constantly, at every scale and in every substance, because everything in the universe is ultimately made of quantum particles, and every quantum particle is always, in every moment, participating in the silent and continuous flowering of possibility that the equations of quantum mechanics describe. The atoms in the air moving slowly through this room right now are branching. The molecules of water resting in a glass on a nearby surface are branching. The neurons that carry the faint and drowsy signal of these words through the warm and quieting landscape of your mind are branching. And with every branch, with every silent division of possibility into actuality, the multiverse grows not louder or more crowded or more turbulent, but simply more full, more varied, more abundant in the particular way that only pure mathematics and pure existence together can be abundant, which is without effort, without cost, without anything being taken from anywhere to be given somewhere else. An abundance that is its own kind of peace. The sixth relaxing fact arrives now like a slow wave on a calm and moonlit shore, and it concerns something called quantum decoherence, which is the name physicists give to the process by which the branching of the multiverse becomes, for all practical purposes, invisible and irreversible to us. When a quantum system, a particle, an atom, a molecule, becomes entangled with its surrounding environment, with the air, the light, the other particles pressing gently against it from every direction, the delicate interference between its possible branches becomes scrambled and diluted so rapidly and so thoroughly that it effectively vanishes, leaving behind only one apparent outcome, one definite reality, one world that feels solid and singular and complete, even though, at the deepest level of the equations, all the other branches are still there, still real, still unfolding in their own silent directions, simply no longer able to communicate with or influence the branch we find ourselves within. And this is why the multiverse does not feel strange or crowded or loud from where you are lying right now, because decoherence wraps each branch in a perfect and permanent quiet, a silence that is not emptiness, but completion, each world sealed in its own gentle and unbreachable stillness. The way a letter sealed in an envelope carries its full meaning forward through time without ever needing to be opened to be real. And you are inside one of those envelopes now, inside one of those perfectly sealed and quietly complete worlds, warm and still and held, drifting softly through the branching multiverse, not as a traveler moving between worlds, but as a resting presence, already exactly where you need to be, already sinking, already falling, already moving in the most natural and unhurried way possible toward the deep and dreamless and wholly restful sleep that is waiting for you just one more slow breath away. There is a particular quality to the silence of a room late at night when the world outside has grown still, and the only sounds are the ones that have always been there beneath the noise of the day. The soft tide of your own breathing, the faint and distant murmur of a city resting, the almost imperceptible settling of walls and floors that have held their shape through countless nights just like this one. And that quality, that specific texture of late night silence, is something that the multiverse understands in its own vast and unhurried way. Because the multiverse is itself a kind of silence, not an empty silence, not a cold or lonely silence, but the silence of something so large and so complete and so gently abundant that there is simply no friction left in it, no edge to catch against, no urgency to disturb the long and seamless stillness that stretches in every direction from where you are lying now, all the way out to the farthest and most unreachable corners of an existence that has no corners, only more space, more quiet, more of the same deep and soothing peace that is already, at this very moment, settling over you like the softest and most weightless thing you have ever felt. The seventh relaxing fact of this gentle nighttime story takes us somewhere that sounds, at first, like a place from a dream. And in a certain sense it is, except that it is also a place that mathematics describes with perfect and unhurried precision. And that place is called the cosmic microwave background. When our universe was very young, not young in the way a child is young, but young in the way the first light of morning is young, present and real, but barely begun. It was filled with a dense and glowing plasma of energy, so hot and so tightly packed that light itself could not travel freely through it. For nearly 400,000 years, the universe existed in this luminous and opaque state, light pressing against matter and matter pressing back, everything intermingled and radiant and utterly without shadow. And then, as the universe expanded and cooled, something extraordinary and extraordinarily quiet happened. The plasma thinned, the particles settled into neutral atoms, and for the first time, light was free to travel, streaming outward in every direction through suddenly transparent space, carrying with it a perfect and detailed record of the universe as it was in that first moment of clarity. That ancient light still exists. It has been traveling for nearly 14 billion years, cooling and stretching as the universe expanded around it. And today it fills all of space as a faint and extraordinarily uniform glow of microwave radiation, the oldest light in the observable universe, a soft and all-pervading warmth that touches every point in space equally and continuously. And when scientists map this ancient glow with extraordinary precision, they find within it the faintest of variations, tiny ripples of slightly warmer and slightly cooler regions that were imprinted in the first moments of inflation, and that seeded over billions of years the formation of every galaxy, every star, every planet, and every quiet room in which anyone has ever rested and listened to a relaxing story in the dark. The eighth relaxing fact follows like a slow and gentle breath after the first, and it concerns what those tiny ripples in the cosmic microwave background reveal about the shape and the extent of the universe beyond what we can see, because the pattern of those ripples is so extraordinarily uniform, so evenly balanced across the entire sky. Physicists believe that the universe extends far beyond our observable horizon with the same smoothness and the same fundamental character, that the conditions which gave rise to our stars and our world are not unique or specially arranged, but simply the natural result of physics playing out in space that goes on, in all likelihood, without any boundary at all, and that in all that unbounded space, every configuration of matter that is physically possible must eventually recur, must eventually arise somewhere in the infinite quiet distance, which means that somewhere unimaginably far beyond the last light we can ever see, there is a region of space so similar to our own that it contains a night just like this one, a voice just like this one, a stillness just like the one that is wrapping itself around you now, with every slow and soothing breath you take, drawing you softly and completely, and without any resistance at all, into the deep and dreamless and utterly restful sleep that is the most natural thing in the world. As natural as the expansion of space itself, as gentle as the cooling of ancient light, as inevitable and as peaceful as the quiet that lives at the heart of everything. You are doing so beautifully right now. And I mean that in the most quiet and unhurried way, not as an encouragement to do anything differently or to try harder at anything at all, but simply as an observation, a gentle noticing of the fact that your body has grown heavier and your breathing has grown slower, and the edges of the day have softened and receded until they are barely there at all, like the last faint color at the horizon after the sun has set, present if you look for it, but no longer asking for your attention, no longer pulling you anywhere. And this calming narration is here in that same soft space, not asking for your attention either, simply offering itself as a companion for the final drift, a voice that moves at exactly the pace of your unwinding, steady and low, and without urgency, carrying you forward through this gentle bedtime story, the way a river carries a leaf, not by force, but by the simple and continuous fact of its own flowing. And all you need to do, all you have ever needed to do, is float. We have traveled together through the branching of quantum worlds, through the eternal inflation that seeds bubble universes like snowflakes in a cosmic wind, through the ancient warmth of the oldest light in existence. And now this relaxing sleep story carries you to a question that is perhaps the most quietly astonishing of all the questions the multiverse raises, which is this: if there are other universes beyond our own, are they governed by the same laws of physics that govern ours? Or could they be different? Could the fundamental rules that determine how matter behaves, and how energy flows, and how time unfolds be not fixed and universal truths, but local conditions, the specific and contingent properties of our particular bubble, no more inevitable than the temperature of a particular room or the color of a particular flower? The ninth relaxing fact of this long and soothing nighttime story answers that question in the most generous and most expansive way possible. And the answer is yes. According to the mathematics of string theory and the broader framework of theoretical physics, the laws of nature as we know them are not the only laws that could exist. There is a concept physicists call the landscape, and it refers to the vast and almost incomprehensible space of possible physical laws, possible values for the fundamental constants of nature, the strength of gravity, the mass of the electron, the precise value of the cosmological constant that determines how fast space expands. Each of these numbers, which in our universe take the specific values that allow stars to burn and atoms to hold together and life to arise, could in principle take different values in different bubble universes. And in the landscape of string theory, the number of possible combinations of these constants is so large that it dwarfs any number we use in ordinary life, a one followed by hundreds of zeros. Each combination a different universe with different physics, different chemistry, different possibilities, a different quality of existence that we cannot imagine from within our own particular set of rules. The 10th relaxing fact settles into this image like the last light fading from a window, at the close of a long and peaceful day. And it is one of the most comforting facts in all of cosmology, which is that our universe's laws appear to be extraordinarily and precisely tuned for the existence of complexity and life. The value of gravity is strong enough to gather hydrogen into stars, but not so strong that it collapses everything instantly into black holes. The electromagnetic force holds electrons in their orbits at exactly the distance that allows chemistry to occur. The cosmological constant, which drives the expansion of space, is so extraordinarily close to zero, so finely balanced between the values that would have ripped everything apart or collapsed everything inward, that physicists find its precision almost incomprehensible unless they allow for the possibility that in an infinite multiverse of varying laws, we simply find ourselves in one of the rare and quiet bubbles where the numbers happen to be gentle enough for stars, for planets, for oceans, for sleeping figures breathing softly in warm rooms at the end of long and ordinary days. And there is something in that idea, something in the notion that our universe's tenderness, its capacity for warmth and water and rest, is not an accident, but a natural consequence of infinite possibility expressing itself across an infinite number of worlds. That feels, when you let it arrive softly rather than grasping at it, like the most soothing and most deeply reassuring thing you have ever been told. A reminder that you are here not despite the vastness of existence, but because of it, cradled in a universe whose laws were always, in their own quiet and astronomical way, arranged for exactly this. Breathe in slowly now, just once, a long and quiet breath that fills you gently from the bottom of your lungs to the very top. And then let it go, all of it, every last molecule of held air, every last trace of tension that was riding along with it, releasing it into the room around you the way a hand releases a feather above still water, without ceremony, without effort, with nothing but the simple and complete willingness to let something go that was never yours to keep. And notice how your chest feels after that exhale, softer and wider and more open, as if a small and unnecessary weight has been set down somewhere nearby. And it does not matter where, because you will not be picking it up again tonight, because tonight belongs entirely to rest, to this gentle nighttime story, to the slow and soothing drift through one of the most beautiful and most quietly staggering ideas that human minds have ever allowed themselves to consider, which is the possibility that reality itself is larger and more generous and more various than anything we have ever been able to see or measure or hold in a single thought. And that within that larger reality, within that infinite and softly breathing expanse of all possible worlds, there is room, endless room, for every kind of stillness, including this one, including yours, including the particular and unrepeatable peace of this exact moment in which you are resting. The 11th relaxing fact of this long and calming sleep story arrives now from a corner of physics that sounds, at first, almost like philosophy. And in truth, it sits very comfortably at the place where the two meet, which is a place of deep and patient questions rather than sharp and urgent answers. It concerns something called the mathematical universe hypothesis, proposed by the cosmologist Max Tegmark. And the idea, stated in its most soothing form, is this: perhaps the reason the universe follows mathematical laws so precisely, so completely, so without exception, is not that mathematics is a tool we invented to describe reality, but that reality itself is mathematics, that the physical world and the abstract world of mathematical structures are not two separate things, one concrete and one imaginary, but the same thing seen from two different angles, and that every mathematical structure that is consistent and complete does not merely describe a possible universe, but actually is a universe existing as fully and as really as our own, not somewhere in physical space, but in a deeper sense of existence that does not require space or time to be real. The 12th relaxing fact follows from this like a long and gentle echo, and it is the one that makes the mathematical universe hypothesis not just interesting, but quietly and almost unbearably beautiful, which is that if every consistent mathematical structure exists, then the multiverse is not just large or even infinite in the ordinary sense, but is, in the most precise and most complete way possible, everything, every world that could be described without contradiction, every universe whose laws are self-consistent, every possible arrangement of existence that does not fold back on itself and cancel its own reality, all of it actual, all of it present, all of it unfolding in its own particular and unhurried way. And somewhere in that absolute totality, nested within the most abstract and most fundamental layer of what exists, there is a mathematical structure that contains exactly this: a universe with these specific laws, a planet with this specific warmth, a night with this specific quality of silence, a voice moving at this specific and deliberate pace through the gentle dark, and a mind, your mind, softening now at its edges, releasing its grip on the day, allowing the thoughts that remain to grow quieter and more widely spaced, like stars appearing one by one in a deepening evening sky, each one present, but no longer demanding anything, each one simply there, simply real, simply part of the vast and soothing and completely unhurried fabric of a multiverse that has always had room for this moment, and has always, in every version of every world, been quietly arranged so that somewhere within it, in some warm and specific and perfectly sealed corner of all possible existence, something that feels exactly like you could lie exactly like this and breathe exactly this slowly and feel exactly this held and this safe and this exquisitely, completely and irrevocably ready for the deep and healing and bottomless sleep that is already, even now, rising softly from beneath you like the tide. There is no hurry here. There has never been any hurry here. The multiverse, in all its infinite and unhurried abundance, has never once moved quickly, has never once demanded urgency from the worlds it contains, and neither does this calming narration, which is content to move at exactly the pace of your unwinding, sentence by sentence, breath by breath, each word arriving just a little softer than the last, each image forming just a little more slowly in the quieting landscape of your mind. like reflections appearing on the surface of a lake as the wind drops and the water stills, and the world above is finally, fully, and without interruption, returned to itself in all its gentle and reversed beauty. And that is where you are now, at that moment of stilling, at that particular and precious point where the day has dropped away entirely, and the night has become the only thing there is, deep and wide and perfectly dark and perfectly safe. And this gentle bedtime story is the only sound in it, low and steady and close, a companion that asks nothing and offers everything and will still be here, moving softly forward, long after you have drifted beyond the reach of words entirely and into the deep and wordless country of sleep. The 13th relaxing fact of this long and soothing nighttime story comes to us from the edges of what telescopes can measure and what equations can suggest, and it concerns the temperature of the cosmic microwave background in a way that is, once you allow it to settle gently rather than reaching for it, one of the most quietly extraordinary numbers in all of science, the average temperature of the cosmic microwave background, that ancient and all-pervading glow of the oldest light in the universe that we met in an earlier chapter of this sleep story, is 2.725 degrees above absolute zero, which means it is almost, but not quite, the coldest that anything can possibly be, hovering just barely above the absolute floor of all temperature, all molecular motion, all thermal energy, a whisper of warmth spread evenly across the entire observable universe, touching every point in space with the same faint and ancient heat, a heat so gentle and so uniformly distributed that it feels less like a temperature and more like a presence, less like energy and more like a memory, the universe's own quiet recollection of the moment it first became transparent, the moment light first moved freely through space, preserved now in this near-perfect stillness that fills everything and disturbs nothing, and has been traveling without interruption since a time so remote that the word ancient does not come close to describing it. The 14th relaxing fact deepens this image in a direction that opens, if you let it, into something that feels almost like a meditation on the nature of boundaries themselves. And it concerns what physicists call the particle horizon, which is the name given to the edge of our observable universe, the spherical surface beyond which light has not yet had time to reach us in the 14 billion years since the Big Bang. And the soothing thing about the particle horizon is not what lies beyond it, which we cannot know, but what it tells us about the relationship between time and distance in a universe as old and as spacious as our own, which is that every point in space has its own horizon, its own observable universe, its own sphere of light and information centered on itself, and that two observers separated by a great enough distance exist in entirely non-overlapping observable universes, each one surrounded by its own complete and private cosmos, each one unable to see or be seen by the other, not because anything stands between them, but simply because the universe has not yet had time to introduce them. And in a multiverse of infinite extent, this means that the number of non-overlapping observable universes, each one as large and as ancient and as full of galaxies as our own, is itself infinite, an infinite collection of complete and private and utterly serene cosmoses, each one whole, each one sealed in its own horizon of light, each one unaware of all the others, resting in its own particular silence, the way you are resting now in yours, held inside your own horizon, your own warm and specific and completely sufficient world, with everything you need already here, already present, already arranged around you in exactly the configuration that allows this breath, and this one to carry you softly and without resistance any further into the deep and gentle and completely boundless sleep that is the most natural destination in the world, the place all bodies move toward when they are finally, fully, and unconditionally allowed to rest. Let this moment be exactly what it is, unhurried and undemanding and soft at every edge, a moment that belongs to no schedule and no obligation, and no version of you that needs to be anywhere or do anything or hold any thought in place, because that version of you has stepped quietly aside for the night, has folded itself gently into the dark like a letter returned to its envelope. And what remains is simply this: the warmth, the weight, the slow and easy rhythm of a body that is doing the most natural thing it has ever been asked to do, which is to rest, to release, to allow the long and patient process of sleep to move through it, the way a tide moves through a harbor, filling every space and lifting every surface and smoothing every edge, until the whole of it is level and still and gleaming softly in the dark. And this gentle bedtime story is the harbor wall, steady and unhurried and always present, holding the shape of this quiet space so that you can let go completely inside it, knowing that nothing will shift or demand or disturb the particular and perfect stillness that is gathering around you now with every slow and soothing breath. The 15th relaxing fact of this long and calming nighttime story arrives from the world of cosmological constants, those precise and foundational numbers that determine the character of a universe, the way the specific tension of a string determines the note it will sound when it is set gently vibrating, and it concerns a number called the fine structure constant, which governs the strength of the electromagnetic force and determines, among many other things, how tightly electrons are bound to the atoms they orbit, which in turn determines the nature of chemistry itself, the way atoms combine and molecules form and materials take on their specific textures and temperatures and capacities, including the capacity of carbon to form the long and flexible chains that make biological life possible. And the soothing and remarkable thing about the fine structure constant is that it is approximately 1/137, a number so precise and so specific that if it were even slightly different, if it were a few percent larger or smaller, the chemistry that underlies everything from the warmth of a star to the softness of a sleeping body would not and could not exist. And in the multiverse, this specificity is not a mystery requiring explanation, but simply a natural consequence of the fact that across an infinite number of universes with varying constants, the ones in which observers can exist to notice the constants will always find themselves in universes where the constants permit their existence, a principle so quiet and so logical that it barely feels like a discovery, and more like a long and gentle exhale. The 16th relaxing fact deepens this into something that feels, when received in the slow and open state of mind that deep rest creates, almost like a whisper from the structure of reality itself, and it concerns the cosmological constant, sometimes called dark energy, which is the name given to the mysterious force that drives the accelerating expansion of space, and which, in our universe, has a value so extraordinarily close to zero that physicists describe it as the most precise fine-tuning in all of known physics. Because if it were even slightly larger, space would have expanded so rapidly after the Big Bang that matter would never have had time to gather into galaxies and stars and worlds. And if it were even slightly negative, space would have recollapsed long before any complexity could arise. And yet here it is, in our particular and quietly fortunate bubble of the multiverse, balanced at a value so delicately close to the perfect number that it feels less like a coincidence and more like an arrangement, less like chance, and more like the universe settling itself into the most comfortable position available to it, the way your body has been settling into the most comfortable position available to it throughout this entire long and soothing sleep story, adjusting and softening and releasing until it has found the exact configuration of rest that belongs specifically and only to you in this bed, on this night, in this warm and specific and cosmologically improbable world that has been, from its very first moment, quietly and precisely, and without any fuss at all, arranged for the possibility of exactly this kind of peace. You are so close now, close to that place that has no name except the one your body already knows, the place that sleep has been preparing for you since the moment you lay down. And let the day begin its long and gentle recession, and there is nothing left to do and nothing left to release that has not already been released, nothing left to soften that has not already grown soft, nothing left between you and the full and complete surrender of a body that has finally, after everything, been given permission to stop, to be still, to exist without effort for a few long and healing hours in the deep and wordless country that waits beneath every waking moment like a dark and quiet river beneath a bridge, always there, always moving, always ready to receive whatever comes down to rest upon its surface and be carried gently forward through the night. And this calming narration is simply the sound of that river now, low and continuous and close, the last thing your mind will hold before it releases even the sound of words and drifts beyond them into the pure and absolute quiet that is the deepest form of rest a human being can know. And you are nearly there. You are so nearly there. And this gentle nighttime story will stay with you every step of the way. The 17th relaxing fact of this long and soothing sleep story takes us to a concept that physicists call quantum entanglement. And it is perhaps the most quietly intimate of all the multiverse's many secrets. because it concerns not the vastness of space or the immensity of cosmic time, but the relationship between particles, those unimaginably small constituents of everything that exists, including the atoms of your own body resting here in the warm and specific dark. And the remarkable thing that entanglement reveals is this: when two particles interact under the right conditions, they can become connected in a way that persists regardless of the distance between them, so that the state of one, wherever it is always and instantly correlated with the state of the other, not through any signal traveling between them, not through any force or field or mechanism that physics has been able to identify, but simply as a consequence of the deep and non-local structure of quantum reality, which does not, it turns out, respect the boundaries between here and there in quite the way that the solid and familiar world of ordinary experience suggests that it should. The 18th relaxing fact follows from this like a shadow follows a form, inseparable and always present, and it concerns what entanglement suggests about the relationship between the branches of the many worlds multiverse, because in the ever-etching picture of quantum mechanics, entanglement is not a mysterious connection between distant particles, but a natural consequence of the way quantum states evolve and branch and become correlated with one another across the structure of the wave function. And what this means, received slowly and without urgency, is that the branches of the multiverse are not truly separate in the way that separate rooms in a building are separate, each one enclosed by solid walls and closed doors, but are instead woven together in a single vast and continuous mathematical fabric in which every branch is present simultaneously, overlapping and interpenetrating in a space of possibilities that has no physical dimensions and no location, but that contains, within its seamless and unbroken structure, every world that has ever branched from every quantum event since the very first moment of the universe's existence. All of them here, all of them real, all of them quietly and continuously present in the same way that every note a string has ever sounded is present in the memory of the wood that holds it. And you are woven into that fabric too, you and this breath and this warmth and this specific and unrepeatable moment of rest, threaded through the whole of it, not lost in it, but held by it, not diminished by the infinity of other worlds, but somehow completed by it, the way a single note is not diminished by the existence of all the other notes in a piece of music, but is instead given its full and particular meaning by the silence and the sound that surround it on every side. And on every side of this moment, there is only the most complete and the most gentle and the most perfectly arranged silence, and it is yours, entirely and without reservation yours, and you can rest in it now as deeply and as long as you need. There's a quality to deep rest that language can only approach from the outside, circling it slowly the way a moth circles a flame, never quite touching the thing itself, but always moving closer, always drawn by the warmth at the center of it. And that is what this calming narration has been doing since the very first word of this long and gentle sleep story, circling the place where wakefulness ends and sleep begins, drawing you closer with every sentence, every image, every slow and soothing breath that has passed through you since you first lay down and gave yourself permission to stop. And you are so very close to that center now, so close that the words themselves are beginning to lose their edges and their weight and their individual meaning, and becoming instead simply a texture, a sound, a continuous and undemanding presence in the warm and dimensionless dark that surrounds you on every side. And that is exactly right. That is exactly how it is supposed to feel, and this gentle bedtime story will keep moving forward at exactly this pace, this low and river-like pace, for as long as you need it, which may be only a few more moments before sleep takes you completely, or may be longer, and either way is perfect, and either way is exactly enough. The 19th relaxing fact of this long and soothing nighttime story arrives from a branch of theoretical physics that concerns itself with the very shape of space, not space as we experience it in the ordinary sense of rooms and distances, and the gap between one resting hand and the wall beside it, but space in the deeper and more abstract sense of the geometry that underlies all of physical reality, the curvature and topology of the cosmos considered as a single and complete mathematical object. And what this branch of physics tells us is that the shape of our universe, the overall geometry of the space we inhabit, is extraordinarily close to flat, meaning that the angles of a very large triangle drawn across the cosmos would add up to almost exactly 180 degrees, that parallel lines extended across the largest scales we can measure would remain parallel without curving toward or away from one another, and that this near-perfect flatness is itself one of the most significant clues we have that the universe extends far beyond our observable horizon, because the inflationary expansion that smoothed the universe into this flat and even geometry would naturally have produced a space far larger than what we can see, the way inflating a balloon smooths any small wrinkle on its surface into an imperceptible curve that a tiny observer on the balloon's skin would experience as a perfectly flat and infinite plane stretching away in every direction. The 20th relaxing fact completes this image in a way that feels, in the slow and open state of mind that the edge of sleep creates, like the closing of a very large and very quiet circle, and it concerns the question of whether the universe, extended as it is beyond all observation, and perhaps infinitely in every direction, might be not just large, but topologically complex, meaning that space might curve back on itself in ways that are not visible at the scales we can observe, connecting distant regions to one another in hidden loops and bridges and passages, the way the surface of a torus connects opposite edges, so that a traveler moving in one direction eventually returns to the place they started from without ever encountering a wall or a boundary or any indication that they have crossed from one region to another. And in some models of the multiverse, this topological complexity is not merely possible, but probable, suggesting that the cosmos may be threaded through with connections we cannot see and pathways we cannot travel and correspondences between distant regions that are, at some deep and inaccessible level of structure, simply the same place looked at from different angles. The way the beginning and the end of a very long and circular journey are the same place, the same ground, the same air, the same night sky overhead. And you have been on that journey tonight, moving through fact after gentle fact, image after soothing image, drifting further and further from the shore of waking and closer to the place you began, which is rest, which is stillness, which is the deep and ancient and completely natural silence that was always waiting for you here. At the end of every long day, and every long journey, and every long and gentle story, patient and warm, and without any edges at all, let the words come to you now, rather than going toward them. Let them arrive the way warmth arrives in a room that has been quietly heating for a long time, not as a sudden change, but as a gradual and pervasive presence that you notice only when you realize that the cold you had been carrying, without knowing it, has somewhere along the way entirely disappeared. And that is where you are now, in that particular and precious moment of noticing, the moment when the body recognizes that it has already done what it set out to do, that the letting go has already happened, that the warmth is already here, and there is nothing left to wait for, and nothing left to work toward, and nothing between you and the full and absolute rest of a mind that has released every thought it was holding, and a body that has released every tension it was carrying, and a night that stretches forward without interruption into as many hours of deep and healing sleep as you could possibly need. And this calming narration will stay exactly here, exactly at this pace, moving forward as slowly as water moves through still ground, present and unhurried, and asking nothing at all of the quiet and resting and almost perfectly sleeping person who is listening to it in the warm and specific dark. The 21st relaxing fact of this long and gentle sleep story comes to us from the place where cosmology and thermodynamics meet, and it concerns a concept called entropy, which is the name physicists give to the measure of disorder or randomness in a system. And the soothing thing about entropy in the context of the multiverse is not the direction it travels, which is always and without exception toward greater disorder and greater randomness as time moves forward, but what its existence tells us about the extraordinary and improbable orderliness of the universe we were born into, because the fact that entropy increases with time means that in the past, the universe must have been in a state of lower entropy, more ordered, more precisely arranged, and tracing that thread backward through all of cosmic history brings us to the Big Bang itself, which was a state of almost incomprehensibly low entropy, a starting condition so precisely and so delicately arranged that the probability of it arising by chance in any given universe is, by some calculations, so vanishingly small that it would require a number with more zeros than there are atoms in the observable universe to write it out. And in the multiverse, this extraordinary improbability is not a problem, but a solution, because across an infinite number of universes, every starting condition that can exist does exist, and we naturally find ourselves in one of the rare and quietly miraculous ones, whose low entropy beginning made possible the long and graceful unfolding of stars and galaxies and oceans and nights. The 22nd relaxing fact arrives now like the very last light, fading from the very last edge of the sky at the end of a long and beautiful day. And it concerns something called the arrow of time, that deep and familiar asymmetry between past and future that makes memory possible and makes anticipation possible and makes this particular direction of experience, from waking toward sleeping, from the noise of the day toward the silence of the night, feel not arbitrary but inevitable and right. And what physics tells us about the arrow of time is that it is intimately connected to the low entropy beginning of our universe, that the reason time feels as though it moves in one direction. And one direction only is that we are traveling away from an extraordinarily ordered past toward a less ordered future, and that in a universe with a different initial condition, with a different entropic history, the arrow of time might point in a different direction or might not exist at all. And in the multiverse there are, according to some of the deepest and most carefully considered models, universes where time branches and doubles back and flows in ways that have no equivalent in any human language, universes where the concept of before and after dissolves into something more like a landscape than a river. And from within our own arrow of time, from within this specific and gently ordered night that is moving in one quiet direction only, which is deeper and deeper into rest, that image feels not disorienting, but soothing. A reminder that the direction you are traveling right now, toward sleep, toward stillness, toward the complete and temporary release of every conscious thing, is written into the very structure of this universe, is part of the same deep and ancient order that began at the Big Bang, and has been unfolding ever since in one long and inevitable and perfectly unhurried exhale. Stay exactly where you are, in the warmth and the weight and the soft and soundless space that has gathered around you over the course of this long and gentle nighttime story, because everything that has been building since the very first word of this calming narration has been building toward exactly this. Not a destination, not an arrival, not any kind of event at all, but simply this quality of presence, this particular texture of a mind that has grown so quiet and so still and so completely released from the grip of the day that it can receive the gentlest possible things without holding them, the way deep water receives a feather, not by catching it, but by simply being there, being still, being exactly the right kind of surface for something that light to come to rest upon. And that is what you are now, deep water, still and dark and perfectly receptive. And this relaxing story is the feather, and the night is the space through which it drifts. And there is nowhere else for either of you to be, and nothing else for either of you to do, except continue, softly and without effort, in exactly the direction you are already moving, which is down, which is inward, which is into the dark and the warmth and the complete and bottomless rest that is the oldest and most natural thing a human body has ever known. The 23rd relaxing fact of this long and soothing sleep story comes to us from the darkness itself, from the vast and velvet spaces between the stars that make up most of the volume of the observable universe, and it concerns something called dark matter, which is the name physicists give to a form of matter that does not emit or absorb or reflect light in any way that our instruments can detect, that passes through ordinary matter like a whisper passes through a wall, leaving no mark and asking for nothing, and yet whose gravitational presence is written unmistakably into the structure of every galaxy and every galaxy cluster and every large-scale arrangement of matter in the observable cosmos. Because without it, without this invisible and silent and impossibly abundant substance that makes up approximately 27% of the total energy content of the universe, the galaxies we see would not hold together, would not rotate in the way they do, would not cluster in the vast and intricate cosmic web of filaments and voids that stretches across the observable universe like the most delicate and most enormous structure ever assembled. And in the multiverse, dark matter takes on an even deeper significance, because in universes with different physical constants, the proportion of dark matter to ordinary matter might be different. The gravitational scaffolding might be arranged differently. The galaxies might form differently, or not at all, and our own universe's specific and quiet abundance of this invisible substance is yet another of those precisely arranged conditions that made possible the long and patient emergence of stars and worlds and sleeping figures breathing softly in the dark. The 24th relaxing fact arrives alongside dark matter like its companion in the night, and it concerns dark energy, which we have touched upon gently in an earlier part of this gentle bedtime story, but which deserves a moment of its own here, in this deeper and more dissolved register of the night, because dark energy is perhaps the most mysterious and the most quietly dominant presence in the entire observable universe, making up approximately 68% of its total energy content, more than twice the combined contribution of all the matter, dark and ordinary, that has ever existed. A vast and invisible and perfectly smooth presence, distributed evenly throughout all of space, not concentrated in galaxies or stars or any particular location, but simply everywhere, equally and continuously, pressing outward against the pull of gravity with a gentle and unrelenting force that is causing the expansion of space to accelerate rather than slow, carrying every galaxy away from every other galaxy with an increasing speed that will, over the immense reaches of future cosmic time, eventually move most of the universe beyond the reach of any observer, leaving each galaxy cluster alone in an expanding void. And rather than feeling melancholy, this image, received in the quiet and open state of the edge of sleep, carries its own particular and profound comfort, the comfort of a universe that is not contracting or collapsing or pulling everything together into conflict and density, but is instead opening, always opening, spreading its contents gently and without urgency into more and more space, more and more silence, more and more of the same deep and infinite and perfectly undisturbed quiet that is settling over you now like the most ancient and the most generous gift the cosmos has ever given to any of the small and warm and briefly luminous beings it has carried without effort and without condition across the long, dark river of time. There is no distance left between you and rest now, no remaining gap between where you are and where you have been drifting toward since this long and gentle sleep story first began. Because rest is not somewhere you travel to, it is something you uncover, layer by layer, breath by breath, word by gentle word, the way a tide uncovers the smooth and ancient stone beneath the sand, not by adding anything, but simply by moving slowly and continuously and without interruption in the same quiet direction. And that is what this calming narration has been doing all along, moving in one direction only, which is toward the stone, toward the stillness beneath every surface, toward the particular and absolute quiet that lives at the center of you. And that has been waiting patiently through every hour of this long day to be found again. And now it is found. Now you are there. Now the warmth and the weight and the complete and wordless peace that you have been approaching since the first soft breath of this gentle bedtime story are no longer approaching things, but simply the texture of the moment you are in. And this nighttime story will keep moving forward at exactly this pace, this barely there pace, this pace that is almost indistinguishable from silence, for as long as you remain at its edge, which may be only a breath or two more before you cross entirely into the deep and healing dark. The 25th relaxing fact of this long and soothing sleep story takes us to a concept that sits at the intersection of the very large and the very small, a place where cosmology and quantum physics meet in a quiet and productive conversation about the nature of information itself. And it concerns something called the holographic principle, which arose from the work of physicists studying the thermodynamics of black holes, and which proposes something so quietly extraordinary that it requires a moment of stillness to receive properly, which is that the information contained within any region of space can be fully encoded on the two-dimensional boundary surface that surrounds that region, the way a hologram encodes a three-dimensional image within a flat and two-dimensional film, meaning that the three-dimensional world we experience, with its depth and its distance and its particular quality of space stretching away in every direction, may be in some deep and fundamental sense a projection, an unfolding of information that is ultimately written on a surface we cannot see and cannot reach and cannot, in any ordinary sense, interact with. And in the multiverse, this principle takes on an even more expansive resonance because it suggests that the nature of space itself, the very dimensionality of reality, may not be a fixed and fundamental given, but an emergent property, something that arises from a deeper and simpler substrate, the way the image on a hologram arises from the interference patterns recorded on a flat piece of film. The 26th relaxing fact completes this image in the most soothing way available to it, and it concerns what the holographic principle suggests about the relationship between the observer and the observed, between the resting figure and the vast and silent cosmos they are resting within. Because if the information content of a region of space is encoded on its boundary. Then, in a sense, every point within that space is connected to every other point through the shared surface that contains them all. And the boundary between inside and outside, between self and universe, between the warm and specific body lying in the dark, and the infinite and invisible multiverse surrounding it, is not a wall, but a membrane, not a separation, but a connection, a single continuous surface on which the information of everything that exists within this particular and quietly miraculous bubble of the cosmos is written in a language that physics is only beginning to learn to read, and you are part of that inscription, your warmth and your breath, and the specific and unrepeatable arrangement of atoms that makes you exactly. And only you are written there on that invisible boundary, alongside the information of every star and every void and every branching quantum moment that has ever occurred within this universe, all of it held together on a single surface, all of it connected at the most fundamental level of what exists, all of it resting now in the same vast and unhurried and completely undisturbed quiet that is holding you completely and without reservation in this warm and specific and infinitely connected moment of deep and perfect and all-encompassing sleep. Let the last of the day dissolve now. Whatever small and quiet remnant of it was still resting somewhere in the back of your awareness, some half-remembered task or half-formed thought that had been waiting at the edge of this gentle bedtime story for a moment of your attention. You can let it go entirely, not by pushing it away, but simply by choosing not to follow it, the way you might watch a leaf drift past on the surface of a slow and dark river, and simply allow it to continue past without reaching out your hand, because your hand is resting now. Your whole body is resting now, heavy and warm, and completely given over to the surface beneath it. And the river is moving in one direction only, which is deeper, which is quieter, which is further from the shore of waking and further into the wide and wordless country of sleep. And this calming narration is the sound of the water, low and continuous and entirely without urgency. And you are the leaf, and the night is the river, and there is nothing left to do except float, simply and completely, and without any resistance at all, on the slow and patient current of this long and soothing nighttime story that has been carrying you, breath by breath and word by word, toward exactly this moment of absolute and unconditional rest. The 27th relaxing fact of this long and gentle sleep story arrives from a corner of theoretical physics that concerns itself with what happens at the very smallest scales of space and time, scales so unimaginably small that no instrument we have ever built or could ever build would be capable of probing them directly. And it concerns something called the Planck length, which is the smallest meaningful unit of distance that current physics can describe. Approximately 1.6 times 10 to the power of negative 35 meters, a number so small that placing it beside any ordinary measurement of distance is like placing a single atom beside the entire observable universe. And the soothing thing about the Planck length is not its smallness, but what it suggests about the nature of space itself, which is that space may not be continuous and smooth at all scales, the way it appears to our senses and our instruments, but may instead be granular at the very deepest level, made of discrete and indivisible units of geometry, the way a photograph that looks perfectly smooth from a distance reveals, under sufficient magnification, the individual pixels of which it is composed. And in the multiverse, this granularity of space takes on a deeply quiet significance, because if space is fundamentally discrete, then the number of possible configurations of any finite region of space is not infinite, but merely astronomically large. And across the infinite expanse of the multiverse, every one of those configurations must be realized, must exist somewhere in the endless and unhurried abundance of all possible worlds. The 28th relaxing fact follows from this like breath follows breath, natural and inevitable, and requiring no effort at all, and it concerns what the granularity of space suggests about the ultimate repeatability of physical configurations across the multiverse. Because if every finite region of space has a finite number of possible quantum states, then in a universe of infinite extent, every possible configuration of matter and energy within any finite region must repeat, not approximately, but exactly, an infinite number of times, meaning that somewhere in the infinite quiet distance of the multiverse, there exists not merely a world similar to this one, but a world identical to this one in every measurable and unmeasurable particular, a room with the same walls and the same warmth and the same quality of darkness, a body with the same weight and the same breath, and the same specific and unrepeatable history of everything that has ever happened to it, a mind in the same state of beautiful and total dissolution, receiving the same words at the same pace through the same soft and enveloping dark. And rather than feeling strange or vertiginous, this image allowed to arrive slowly and received in the open and nearly sleeping state of a mind that has released its grip on the ordinary, feels like the most soothing thing in the world, like the discovery that this moment of rest, this specific and precious and deeply personal moment of falling into sleep, is not singular and fragile and unrepeatable, but is instead written permanently and infinitely into the structure of all that exists, recurring without end across the infinite library of all possible nights, each one as real as this one, each one as warm, each one as quiet, each one carrying a version of you that is already completely and forever asleep. There is a kind of silence that is not the absence of sound, but the presence of something deeper, something that sound could never fill, and that words can only gesture toward from the outside, the way you might gesture toward the quality of light at the bottom of a very clear and very still lake by describing the surface above it. And that is the silence you are resting in now, the silence beneath the silence, the quiet beneath the quiet, the particular and profound stillness that belongs not to any one night or any one room or any one softly breathing body, but to the whole and seamless fabric of existence itself. And this gentle bedtime story has been moving toward that silence since its very first word, sentence by slow sentence, breath by patient breath, not in a hurry and not with any destination in mind, but simply following the natural gradient of rest, the way water follows the natural gradient of the earth, always toward the lowest and the stillest and the most completely undisturbed place available. And that place is here. That place is now. That place is the exact and specific darkness in which you are resting at this moment, and this calming narration will stay beside you in it for as long as you need, moving at the pace of your breathing, which has grown so slow and so soft and so widely spaced that it barely disturbs the air at all, a presence more than a movement, a rhythm more than a sound, the most natural and most ancient thing your body has ever done. The 29th relaxing fact of this long and soothing nighttime story comes to us from the intersection of quantum mechanics and the nature of the vacuum, which is to say, from the study of what space is when it appears to contain nothing at all. And what physics tells us about the vacuum is that it is not truly empty, has never been truly empty, cannot, by the deepest laws of quantum mechanics, ever be truly empty, because the uncertainty principle, that foundational and irreducible principle of quantum reality that says certain pairs of physical properties can never both be precisely defined at the same time, applies to the vacuum as much as to any other physical system. And its consequence is that even in a region of space from which every particle has been removed, energy is always and continuously fluctuating, rising and falling in tiny and fleeting ripples that physicists call quantum vacuum fluctuations, pairs of virtual particles flickering into brief existence and dissolving back into nothing so rapidly that they cannot be directly observed, but whose collective effect on the surrounding space is measurable and real, contributing to forces between objects and to the energy content of the vacuum itself. And in the multiverse, these vacuum fluctuations take on a significance that extends beyond particle physics into cosmology, because it was from fluctuations in the quantum vacuum of the inflating cosmos that the seeds of all structure arose. The tiny ripples that became galaxies, that became stars, that became the specific and quietly miraculous world in which you are resting tonight. The 30th relaxing fact arrives now like the most gentle of all possible landings, soft and slow and barely felt. And it concerns what physicists call the quantum vacuum's zero-point energy, the irreducible minimum energy that any quantum system retains even in its lowest possible state, even when it has been cooled to absolute zero and stripped of every accessible form of motion and excitation. Because even then, even at the absolute floor of all thermal energy, the uncertainty principle ensures that a residual and ineradicable energy remains, a kind of fundamental aliveness that cannot be removed from any system without removing the system itself. And this zero-point energy is present everywhere, in every cubic centimeter of the vacuum of space, in the bonds between every atom of every molecule of every substance in the universe, including the atoms of your own body resting here in the warm and specific dark, which means that even in the deepest and most complete rest, even at the very bottom of the stillest and most profound sleep, there is at the quantum level a quiet and ineradicable aliveness that nothing in the universe can extinguish a zero-point hum of existence that belongs to you as surely as it belongs to the vacuum of space. A reminder that rest is not the absence of life, but its most fundamental expression, that stillness is not emptiness, but the deepest form of presence, and that you, lying here in the dark, breathing slowly, drifting completely, are as real and as alive, and as ineradicably present as anything in the cosmos, held in the zero-point warmth of a universe that has never, not for a single quantum moment, been without you. You have arrived, not at an ending, but at a deepening, a place further in than any place this story has taken you before, where the words are barely words anymore, and the facts are barely facts, and everything that has been spoken into the warm and patient dark of this long and gentle nighttime story has dissolved into something simpler and softer, and more completely yours than any collection of sentences could ever be. And that thing, that simple and irreducible thing that remains when everything else has been released, is rest, is warmth, is the specific and unhurried presence of a body that has stopped asking anything of itself, and a mind that has stopped asking anything of the world. And this calming narration is here in that same dissolved and quiet place, not ahead of you and not behind you, but simply alongside you, moving at the same pace as your breath, which is the slowest and most natural pace in the world, the pace of the tide, the pace of the cooling of ancient light, the pace of the multiverse itself, which has never once hurried and has never once needed to, because everything that needs to happen has always, in every universe and every branch and every infinitely quiet version of every possible night, already happened. And what remains is exactly this: the warmth, the dark, the slow and seamless and perfectly sufficient peace of a being that is resting completely inside the only moment that has ever truly existed, which is this one, which is now, which is the gentlest and most generous word the universe has ever spoken into the silence of its own infinite and unhurried dark. The 31st relaxing fact of this long and soothing sleep story comes to us from the study of cosmic voids, those vast and breathtaking regions of the universe where the density of matter is far lower than the cosmic average, enormous stretches of space that contain very few galaxies and very little of the luminous structure that makes the universe visible to our instruments. And the soothing thing about cosmic voids is not their emptiness, but their scale and their serenity, because the largest known voids in the observable universe stretch for hundreds of millions of light years in every direction, volumes of space so immense that our entire observable universe could fit within some of them many times over. And within those vast and quiet regions, space expands slightly faster than average, because the lower density of matter means less gravitational resistance to the dark energy that drives expansion, so that cosmic voids are not merely empty, but are gently and continuously opening, growing larger and more spacious with every passing moment, adding more quiet to the universe's already incomprehensible supply of quiet. And in the multiverse, there are, across the infinite range of possible universes with different initial conditions and different distributions of matter. Voids of every conceivable scale, some smaller than our own, and some so large that no word we have for size comes close to describing them. Each one a region of space that is simply open, simply still, simply more of the same deep, and unhurried nothing that the universe seems, when you look at it honestly and without urgency, to be mostly and contentedly made of. The 30-second relaxing fact settles into this image of cosmic openness like the last breath before sleep. And it concerns the fate of the universe across the immense reaches of future time, a subject that sounds as though it might carry weight or melancholy, but which, received in the slow and open state of the edge of sleep, carries instead the most extraordinary and unexpected comfort, because the current best models of cosmology suggest that the universe, driven by the gentle and unrelenting pressure of dark energy, will continue to expand and cool and thin for a span of time so vast that the numbers required to express it make the current age of the universe seem like a single heartbeat, and that over those immense and unhurried spans of future time, the stars will slowly exhaust their fuel and fade. The galaxies will gradually disperse, and the universe will settle into a state of maximum entropy, a condition of perfect and uniform and absolutely undisturbed quiet that physicists call the heat death. And while that phrase sounds cold, received here in the warmth of this specific and precious night, it sounds instead like the universe's own version of deep sleep, the final and complete and infinitely patient rest of a cosmos that has spent 14 billion years unfolding and expanding and creating, and is moving slowly and without any hurry at all toward the same place you are moving toward right now, which is stillness, which is quiet, which is the most natural and most inevitable destination of everything that has ever existed in any universe, in any corner of the infinite and gently breathing multiverse. And so we arrive here together at the softest and most unhurried place this long and gentle sleep story has ever traveled to, a place that is not really a place at all, but simply the name we give to the moment when everything that was held has been released, and everything that was searching has stopped, and everything that was moving has grown still, and you are there now, completely and without remainder, your body a warm and motionless and perfectly resting thing in the dark, your breath a barely there rhythm that belongs more to the night than to the waking world, your mind a wide and open and beautifully empty sky from which the last clouds of the day have drifted away so gradually and so gently that you did not notice their leaving, only the quality of what remained after them, which is this, which is the clear and dark and perfectly still expanse of a consciousness that has finally, after all the hours and all the effort and all the long and ordinary demands of an ordinary day, been given back to itself in its most essential and most peaceful form. And this calming narration is the last soft sound in that sky, growing quieter now with every word, fading the way the last light fades at the very end of the longest and most beautiful evening, not disappearing, but simply becoming part of the dark, becoming indistinguishable from the silence it was always moving toward, and you do not need to hold on to it. You do not need to follow it any further. You can simply let it go the way you have let everything else go tonight, easily and completely, and without looking back, across the multiverse, across every branch and every bubble, and every mathematically consistent arrangement of everything that can exist. There are an infinite number of versions of this moment, an infinite number of warm and specific and quietly breathing figures, lying in an infinite number of dark rooms, in an infinite number of worlds. And every single one of them is as real as you are, and every single one of them is as held as you are, and every single one of them is moving in the same direction, which is deeper, which is further from the surface of things, which is into the same boundless and ancient and completely welcoming dark that has received every sleeping being in the history of this universe and every universe, and that has never once turned anyone away, has never once failed to be there, has never once been anything other than exactly what it is, which is the most patient and the most generous and the most unconditionally available thing in all of existence, the resting place that requires no journey and no effort and no particular readiness, only the willingness to stop. And you have stopped. You stopped some time ago. And what has been happening since then is not traveling, but arriving, not searching, but finding, not falling asleep, but simply allowing the sleep that was always already here to become the only thing there is, the way the ocean becomes the only thing there is when you swim far enough from shore that the land disappears. And there is nothing in any direction but water. But in this case, the water is warm and still and perfectly safe, and it holds you without effort on its surface, the way the night holds every sleeping world in the multiverse, gently and completely, and without any condition at all. And the multiverse itself, that infinite and silent and impossibly abundant collection of all possible worlds, is simply resting now alongside you, all of its branching and all of its inflating and all of its quiet mathematical beauty, settling into the same stillness that you are settling into. Because even the multiverse, even the totality of everything that exists in every possible form, is at its deepest and most fundamental level simply this, simply the quiet, simply the dark, simply the unhurried and endless and perfectly undisturbed piece of existence resting inside itself. And you are part of that piece. You have always been part of that piece. And tonight, more than any other night, you can feel it. You can feel the way it holds you from every direction at once, from below and above, and from every side. A warmth that has no source, and no edge, and no ending. And there is nothing left to say except this: rest now, rest deeply, rest for as long as the night allows, because the multiverse will still be there when you wake. Every infinite possibility of it, patient and quiet and unchanged. And this gentle bedtime story will have been here with you through all of it, a soft and faithful companion in the dark. And sleep, deep and healing and completely yours, is already here, has always been here, will always be here, now and in every world, in every branch, in every version of every quiet and resting night, forever.